Good afternoon, and welcome to today's workshop, Nutritious and Delicious, Versatile Lunch Recipes for Vibrant Aging. My name is Tammy Cave, and I am a caregiver specialist with the Caregiver and Supportive Services Unit of the Fairfax County Area Agency on Aging. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping tips and a few housekeeping items, such as closed captions are available for today's session, and the presentation is being recorded. A link to the recording will be emailed to all registrants 1 week from today. If you have questions at any time, please use the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen to submit them. The chat feature will not be available for this workshop today. Last, there will be a brief survey as you sign out. Please take a moment to fill out that survey because it helps us to create programs that are relevant and important to our caregiving community. It is my pleasure to introduce today's workshop instructor, Tori Gwilliam. Tori Gwilliam is a registered dietitian nutritionist with a degree from Virginia Tech, and she has a graduate certificate in public health from George Mason University. Currently, she serves as the Congregate Nutrition Program Supervisor for the Fairfax County Area Agency on Aging. With over a decade of experience in community nutrition, Tori has dedicated her career to promoting health and wellness through effective nutritional interventions. She has a strong focus on addressing health disparities and food insecurity among diverse age-based populations. Her extensive experience spans several public health organizations and nutrition-focused grant programs, including the Older Adult Congregate Nutrition Program, Women, Infants, and Children Special Supplemental Nutrition Program, and various age-specific initiatives within parks and recreation departments. Tori, we thank you so much for being here. We are looking forward to your health and wellness workshop today. Please come on camera and take it away.
Hello. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the great introduction. I will share some slides. So again, thank you for the introduction. My name is Tori. I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about some versatile lunch recipes for vibrant aging. We'll be demonstrating these recipes and happy to take questions and answers as we move through the recipes today. So to begin, I want to share with you a little bit of information about the key nutrients that help support healthy aging. Also some food preparation considerations when caring for older adults, and some tips for meal planning. And then we'll spend the bulk of our time doing the cooking steps. So here list some of the key nutrients that are important to consider for older adults. This includes calcium, vitamin D, vitamin B12, protein, fiber, and hydration. And these nutrients become important as we age because as the body is aging, these nutrients are contributing to all of the bodily systems. Everything from the skeletal muscular system, the cardiovascular system, the brain and nervous system, immunity, and more. So having adequate intake is going to be important for those systems to properly function. Also, as we age, the calorie needs decline, so you're not utilizing as much energy. And so choosing nutrient-dense foods that contain these nutrients becomes important. Also, some older adults experience a decline in appetite. So similarly with the decline in calories, when the intake declines, picking nutritious, healthy foods is really important to get adequate intake of these key nutrients. And then finally, also with aging, the digestion and absorption of some of these key nutrients can decline. So again, the importance of getting adequate intake to maximize its circulation and make sure that the bodily systems are properly utilizing all of these nutrients. On the handouts that you're going to receive from today's presentation, you'll be able to find some extra details about each of these nutrients, the role that it has in the body, the sources it comes from, and the recommended amounts. There is also additional information hyperlinked in your handouts that will bring you to some fact sheets on these nutrients. I'm just going to briefly talk to some of the sources of these nutrients while we're together today. So for calcium, dairy is a primary source, which includes milk, yogurt, and cheese. Also, fortified milk alternatives are available. You will want to check your milk alternatives or plant-based milks to ensure that they are fortified with calcium. You may also find fortified orange juices and cereal, and dark green leafy vegetables are a good source of calcium. Vitamin D is made by the body through exposure to sunlight. Of course, for skin health, we want to limit exposure to sunlight, but there's not too many dietary sources of vitamin C. The predominant one is salmon. You can also find it in smaller quantities in liver and egg yolks. There are some fortified products on the market, including fortified orange juices and cereals, and also some milk and milk alternatives that are fortified. Again, for fortification, it's important to check out the labels. It would be described in the nutrition facts label and ingredients list if there's fortification. Vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 comes from animal sources. So here we have meat, fish and seafood, poultry, eggs, dairy. And then again, it's also fortified in cereal, nutritional yeast, and some milk alternatives. So again, checking out the products to see if that nutrient is a part of the item you're selecting is important. But this becomes a challenging nutrient to get adequate intake if the intake of protein, of animal proteins decline, which we do see happen sometimes with our older adults. Sometimes that's because of taste, sometimes it's because of just preferences in general, but sometimes it's a chewing and swallowing concern, and even sometimes a budgetary consideration. So we're also talking about protein. So those go hand in hand. Protein is found in those animal sources, meat, fish, seafood, poultry, eggs, and dairy. Some plant-based sources of protein include nuts and seeds, beans, soy products, and whole grains. Some examples are quinoa, oats, and there's others. Fiber. Fiber is found in our beans, nuts, and seeds, whole grain, fruits, and vegetables. And then here we're talking about hydration. So in addition to those nutrients, adequate hydration is important for your bodily systems. And there's some tips here. Keeping water nearby, trying flavored water. You can add fruits, herbs, cucumber to water, and it'll impart that flavor into the water and add some variety without adding additional sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, sugar, and other things that we may not want to consume high levels of. You can consider the water content in foods, things like soups and stews. Also, certain fruits and vegetables, such as watermelon and cucumbers, have a higher content of water, and items like Jell-O and Italian ices, like those types of products contribute to the water content in the diet. There's some other food considerations when you're planning meals for older adults. Food safety becomes really important because immunity declines, and so it can put you at higher risk of a foodborne illness. There may be some considerations for chewing and swallowing concerns, some other physical challenges that impact the ability to feed oneself. That could be the food preparation itself. And as a caregiver, you might be managing that. But it also could include the ability to transfer the food from the plate to the mouth. And various different medical conditions can contribute to those challenges. So there are adaptive plates and utensils out there that can aid with some of those challenges. If the one you care for is experiencing that, it would be a good idea to talk it over to the healthcare team. They might have some good specific tips and tricks that apply to the situation. There are individualized dietary needs that an individual's nutritional needs vary based on their medical conditions, illnesses, injuries, and also for managing any chronic diseases. So we know the risk of chronic diseases increases as we age and we're prone to developing chronic diseases. And there may be specific nutrient recommendations for managing that. There may also be food and medication interactions that you might want to consider. So again, I have some additional resources and some links that you can check out later to help with some of these topics. Food safety, the 4 key steps is clean. Cleaning involves washing hands, washing surfaces, washing equipment properly, also washing your produce. And separate avoids cross-contamination. So you want to separate out any at-risk products like raw meat and seafood from any ready-to-eat products like fruits and vegetables or potentially grains. Cook, you want to make sure that you're cooking your food to the proper temperatures. And also chill. So you also want to make sure that cold food stays cold. For some ideas to address any chewing or swallowing concerns, first addressing any oral health issues like missing or broken teeth or pain in the mouth. Drinking a beverage with meal might help with the chewing of the food. Eating slowly can reduce any risk of dysphagia or aspiration due to dysphagia. Using gravies and sauces may also help with the meal. Shredding raw vegetables and fruits will make it easier to chew. And also for the meats, using really thinly sliced meat or ground meat will help with the ability to chew. Here's just a few notes about food medication interactions. And again, I'm not going to go into extensive details, but there is a resource here for you to check out. But why is it important to listen to those recommendations? That's because if those items are ingested together, it may make the drug too active, but it also might make the drug less active. Different interactions have different effects. But it also could cause additional unwanted side effects or even toxicity. Common food items that you'll see that interacts with medications include grapefruit, some dairy, sometimes dairy, vitamin K, tyramine, and alcohol. So as you know, we're going to be cooking lunches today, and we're going to give you a bunch of tips and tricks on how you can meal prep this so you can get all the food prepared when you have the time at the beginning of the week, and then you can pull it out and make those meals in different variety and format using similar ingredients throughout the week. So it adds variety to your diet throughout the week, but you are using similar ingredients and getting it prepared ahead of time. So I do have some additional tips for meal planning. See what you already have at home and plan your recipes and meals around those items. Write it down. Write down what meals you're going to have, when you're going to have it. Look up the recipes to try and then write down those ingredient lists when you make your grocery list. And think about how much time you have. How much time do you have for meal prep? How much time do you have to execute the meal at mealtime? And plan to use leftovers. So you might have a dish that you anticipate having leftovers, and then think ahead of what ingredients you would need to repurpose those leftovers.
Hi, Tori.
Yes.
One of our attendees had a question regarding what is tyramine?
Great question. It is in, bear with me just, oops, sorry. I did have an additional note here that didn't make it into the slide, so bear with me just a moment. So thiamine is an amino acid that is typically found in the aged and fermented foods. So those are the common sources, but it's a type of amino acid.
Okay,
Um,
great.
Also,
Thank
as a note, the vitamin K is found predominantly in dark green leafy vegetables. That's a wonderful question. Thank you.
you.
When you're meal prepping, there are some basic cooking equipment you may want to consider for your kitchen, and then also some supplies to have on hand, predominantly for storage purposes. So some basic cooking equipment to have is a chef's knife, a cutting board, a skillet, a pot, mixing bowls, measuring spoons and cups, and spatulas. And they don't have to be expensive. I mean, decent quality will last you longer. Um, but you also don't have to have all of the kitchen gadgets. You could do a lot simply with a knife and cutting board. So that's one of the things that I really like to point out to people is there are a lot of things on the market, and you don't need to fully stock your kitchen with each individual gadget that does one task. Really, knife and cutting board should do it. Some supplies would be Ziploc bags, particularly perhaps freezer bags if you are planning on storing in the freezer for a longer period of time. Or we'll talk today about buying things in bulk and portioning it and freezing it for a later date. Storage containers, food storage containers. So you do want to make sure that the containers you use are appropriate for storing food. It is not recommended to reuse plastic containers from, say, takeout or grocery products that have been emptied. It's not recommended to wash those out and use again for food storage. So you want to make sure that it is appropriate for storing food. And tinfoil, parchment paper, and plastic wrap may be useful for keeping items separated or keeping it tightly packaged and airtight, which will help preserve the quality and safety for longer. Labels and permanent marker can be a very useful tool to mark when that food was made and when it needs to be thrown out, also marking what is that item when it's in a container or a Ziploc bag so you remember what it is and you can actually take it out and utilize it. Or if you're leaving meals for other people, then they know what the item is. You could even write the instructions on how to heat it. So you can make lots of notes with labels and permanent markers.
Tori, we have another question for you. It says that the latest research is showing to not use plastics for food storage and also cooking with Teflon coating or plastic spatulas. Do you feel even storage in plastic bags or containers is not safe?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. There's definitely still more research to be had. What's most important at this point is that what you are using is intact. So, for example, with your spatulas and your pans, your nonstick pans, if there's any scratching or breakage, it's time to discard it. So you want to make sure it's intact. You also want to make sure that it's used for that purpose. So even with plastic bags or plastic Tupperware containers, you want to make sure it's intended for food. And I know you're talking even above and beyond those general guidance, but more research really has to be had on that topic because there is some conflicting literature about the safety of these items. Now, if this is something important to you that you want to impart extra safety or extra, caution, then they do make glass storage containers for food, and you can use that, and you can still use that in the refrigerator and the freezer. So you can buy those products. You can cook with stainless steel if you want to avoid any nonstick pans. So those are choices you can make for you and your family. Thank you. So quickly, storage considerations, and then we're going to jump into the recipe, and happy to take questions as we talk through the food today. One is definitely making sure you're storing at the proper temperature. So a refrigerator should be 40 degrees or below, and you can keep food in the refrigerator generally for 3 to 4 days. Freezer, it would be less than 0 degrees, and it can stay for 3 to 4 months. At that point in time, it can degrade the quality of the food, but generally it's not a safety concern. It's as long as it's been maintained at the proper temperature, but quality does decline over time in the freezer. You do want to package in airtight containers. You want to check the use by dates for food, and when you are cooking that food or repurposing that food, you still want to abide by that use by date from the original package. So an example is something's going to expire today and you cook it. Well, you don't want to then store that to eat tomorrow because that use by date was today. So being aware of those use by dates, and then watching for signs of spoilage on the food, off smells, off colors, any mold, then you want to just discard it right away. Get creative. You want to boost up that nutrient value by adding fruits and vegetables to your meals. And there's some tips here. There's also some tips for some meatless substitutions and some ways to enhance flavor to your meals without adding additional salts and sodium and sugar. Our 3 recipes today is a grilled chicken, apple, and white cheddar cheese sandwich. We'll have a chicken apple salad sandwich and a chicken and apple barbecue sandwich. So again, similar ingredients that we're using in different ways. All of these recipes are similar in nutritional value, between 330 calories to 360 calories. The shopping list, I spent less than $40 on the ingredients for this recipe, and you will have some of the ingredients left over. So therefore, each portion is $2 or less. Each of these sandwiches are $2 or less per portion. And I'm going to join our dietetic intern, Abby, in the kitchen. Excuse me.
So as Tori and Abby get ready, I just want to remind our attendees that you're more than welcome to ask any questions that you'd like during the workshop, and I will forward those questions to them.
Thank you. Yes, please continue to bring those questions in. We are going to start showing you how you're going to meal prep for these recipes, and then how you're going to assemble it to serve. And to start with, anytime you start cooking, as we said, food safety is utmost important. So washing hands, you want to use warm soapy water for at least 20 seconds and drying with a 1-time use cloth. So we're going to start by showing you how to prepare the chicken. You can cook just boneless chicken breasts in the oven at 350 degrees for 20 to 30 minutes until it reaches an internal temperature of 165.
Hey everyone, so here's our already cooked chicken breast, and as Tori said, the slicing that we do is different for each of the menus, so I'm going to show you real quickly just how to do the basic cuts for each of the recipes, and then we'll put it all together later on. So I go ahead and I take my sharp knife, and as we had said, you really want to make sure it is a sharp knife because that will minimize the risk of injury if your knife is on the more dull side. So to start, we're just going to slice the chicken. So slicing, you want to just take it down the center and you want to create an even slice. You'll see in one of our later recipes, we're going to put it across a sandwich on bread so it'll be easy to lay nice and flat. And then for another one of our recipes, you're going to want to chop your chicken. So instead of having a long slice like this, you can take that slice, but then cut it in half and put it into cubes. This will be for our chicken apple salad, and it's just so it's not as big of a bite of chicken. They're just these little uniform cubes like this. And then for our last recipe, we are gonna have shredded chicken. So we have some shredded chicken here. You can do this either using 2 forks, or you can do it just with your hands. Because we had just washed our hands, I'm gonna go ahead and just use my hands because it'll be quicker and easier and still sanitary.
So I have a couple of questions that have come in. What would be a non-meat version of this?
That's a great question. So some of these recipes does use cheese. So if you consume other plant products like dairy, you can use a cheese. You can also substitute with beans or soy products like tofu for most of these recipes.
Or even for the chicken salad, if you wanted to incorporate tuna, make it more of a tuna salad, you can absolutely do that as well.
And then what's the difference between the use by and best by dates? Safety, length of time able to use after the best by date.
Yeah, a best by date is for the quality. So it can be used past that date. You still want to check the products for signs of spoilage. And that's also similar to a sell by date. Sell by date is for the quality. So that's when that store should have it off of its shelf. So there may not necessarily be a use by date on all products. And you do want to be careful to check how long past those best by and sell by dates and use good judgment, but also check it for signs of spoilage. And once a container is actually opened, you want to use it within within 5 to 7 days. So for example, just top of mind, like a hummus, if you open that container of hummus, you want to use it within the week. The 3 to 4 day recommendation that I had noted, that is for when you're prepping food and cooking food and storing it to consume. You would want to consume that within 3 to 4 days.
Okay.
Right.
And what about after the best by date? Like how many days after that date?
It's hard to give a rule of thumb because there's so many different products and so many different considerations.
Oh.
But what I meant by good judgment is not an extensive amount of time. So not like months, even a month itself is a little long. If it's within a few days, a few weeks, just really check the signs of spoilage on that product.
Great. And then for this recipe, is it okay to use rotisserie chicken?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. That's part of the versatility. So you can prep your own chicken. This is going to be a little bit more cost effective because the price per ounce when you buy the chicken breast is going to be a little bit lower. But for ease, that's where you have to consider how much time do you have and what works for you. You can get pre-made chicken, you can get a rotisserie chicken and utilize that in these recipes. So that's a really great point to make.
All right, and then echoing that food safety, for this portion is you really want to make sure before and after you use all your utensils, you use your cutting boards, really making sure that you're thoroughly cleaning them, due to, as Tori said, older adults being at higher risk of illness. So just making sure that everything is thoroughly washed with warm water, hot water, and soap, and making sure everything is clean to start to prevent that cross-contamination, as well as to kill all the bacteria.
And now we're going to start prepping. Oh, and so the chicken itself, once you have that divided, you can divide it into storage containers like we have here, again, for storage, 3 to 4 days in the fridge and 3 to 4 months in the freezer. We'll start prepping our vegetables and fruits. So starting with apple. Apple's going to give a nice crunch, a nice tang to these recipes. Abby here is slicing, dicing, and grating. And for the sliced and diced apple, you still can do that ahead of time and keep it in the fridge for 3 to 4 days. You just want to put a little squeeze of lemon juice on it to avoid some of the browning. The browning is not a safety concern, it's more of a quality concern. The grated For example, we did the grated apple just today and it's already starting to brown. So the grated you're going to want to do, toss with the vinaigrette like you're gonna see here today. And then keep that slaw for no more than 24 hours because it does get soggy. So again, quality consideration.
We also made sure before we began to wash all of our produce, just because you don't know how many hands have touched the produce in terms of picking and then distribution coming to the store. And so we really just want to make sure we are washing off just with water even is all you need to do. And just making sure that once again, any bacteria, any chances of cross-contamination, as well as any potential pesticides still left on there. We're just making sure that it's all clean and ready to go whenever we go to use it, as well as the importance of washing melons. Specifically, whenever you cut into a melon, if you don't wash it and there is something on the outside, just that it can easily get into the inside of your fruit. So just making sure you're washing it as a whole to really minimize that risk.
So we're adding in some of these vegetables, and in this case, fruit, apple, to boost some of that nutrient value of the meal. For the apple, if the person you're caring for has any issues with chewing or swallowing, it might be sufficient to just remove the skin. By removing the skin, you are going to leave out a few of the nutrients and fiber that the apple provides. So if that's not a concern, we do recommend keeping it on. Also grating. So we are using the grated apple in the slaw today, but that could be a way of using it even in the other recipes for someone who might not be able to consume the apple in its full form due to any chewing concerns. We have our chopped celery here today. The chopped celery, so it's similar to the dice that Abby demonstrated. It's just a smaller chop, and we also have some shredded carrots today that we're going to talk about, and lemon. So we prepped all of this ahead of time. The cheese we have prepped it today. Cheese would be best if it was done the day of, because it can dry out if you're using a block cheese like we have. But of course, there's so many products out there. You can just buy sliced cheese. You can just buy shredded cheese. So that's up to you. Again, the time and consideration that you might have, but also your budget, because anything that you buy intact and in bulk will be a lower cost per unit.
And I just wanted to let you know we're at 12:35, just so that I know you guys don't have a clock in the kitchen. So I wanted to
Thank you so much. Thanks for the time check. Yeah, so we're going to get into how we further prepare these recipes for storage. So we can actually make the chicken apple salad ahead of time before we put that chicken in the fridge. So you have two choices there. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to actually prepare the chicken apple salad. We are also going to prepare the barbecue chicken.
All right, so to start for our chicken apple salad, we are going to take our chicken, which is our diced chicken, and then we are going to combine it with our apple that was diced, and then add in some celery. And you also can add in nuts if you would like. We are not going to do that today, but it's certainly an option that you can do to really elevate the taste and throw in some healthy fats. All right, so we'll add our chicken in there.
So diced apple is for the chicken apple salad recipe. Some alternatives to the apple could be a pear or grapes. Grapes cut in half or quartered is a good option for chicken salad.
All right, and then our last part at the beginning is we're going to put our chopped celery all in there, and then we're actually going to take this bowl and put it to the side, and we're going to work on our sauce. So now in here we have a 1/4 cup of just plain Greek yogurt that we're going to combine with 1 tablespoon of lemon juice and 1 tablespoon of honey, and then a sprinkle of salt and pepper.
As a note, a lemon will provide 2 to 3 tablespoons of juice typically. So this recipe essentially is the juice of a half of a lemon. as Abby's assembling this dressing, another note about the celery. Again, if there's any chewing concern or even just a flavor preference, you can omit it. If you like the celery taste, but you don't want that that texture, then you can also substitute the salt in the recipe for a celery salt, so you get a little bit of that celery taste.
All right, so then because my hands are clean, just making sure that I avoid those seeds, I'm actually gonna squeeze the juice over my hand just to make sure those seeds don't get in my dressing. But then we're still getting the juice. All right, and then once that's all in a bowl, we're gonna mix it together until it's all combined.
You can season this dressing to your preference. Of course, we want to be mindful not to have excessive sodium, so a little pinch of salt should do, and a little grind of pepper. Of course, you can use already grated pepper, especially if twisting dexterity is of a concern.
All right, so now that that is all mixed together, we're simply just gonna pour this mixture over our chicken, our celery, and our apple. Then we're gonna give that a good mix.
You may have noticed that we use Greek yogurt today, so that is a healthy substitution you can make. Greek yogurt's a good substitute for creamy items like mayo, ranch, and sour cream. It's a little bit healthier, a little bit less fat. We got a non-fat Greek yogurt, so less fat. And Greek yogurt has a higher protein level than a traditional yogurt. It's also a thicker texture than a traditional yogurt, which is also that texture, that thickness is what makes it a good substitute for things like mayo and ranch.
All right, so now that we have our mixture all assembled, you could even eat it just like this with a spoon or fork if you wanted to. But for some incorporation of whole grains, we went ahead and we toasted some whole grain bread, and we're gonna put it on there.
You can boost this up with even more vegetables, doing some spinach or other greens on the sandwich, a tomato. Again, customizing these recipes to what you have on hand, but what you like, and also giving the boost of nutrients.
Ladies, how can caregivers accommodate dietary restrictions and still have, the flavor like that salt provides when older adults or certain folks aren't able to have sodium?
Also a really great question. And referencing back the handout for the Getting Creative has some of that information. Using aromatic vegetables, onions, celery, carrots, peppers, fennel, leeks, garlic. Those all give a lot of flavor. For cooked recipes, caramelizing, in this case, the toasted bread, the browning of food actually imparts flavor. And also herbs and spices. Explore with different herbs and spices. Chicken salad can be a curry chicken salad. So it adds in extra, and it doesn't have to be a spicy curry, but it adds in turmeric and coriander and different flavors. So you're getting the flavor without necessarily imparting that extra sodium.
All right, so now that we finished our first recipe, we're gonna move on to the chicken apple barbecue sandwiches. So we went ahead and we took that pre-shredded chicken that we had talked about at the beginning, and we're gonna go ahead and mix that with our barbecue sauce. So we'll use 1/4 cup of barbecue sauce.
You can just eyeball it.
And then I have a question. Would it be better to strain the lemon juice through a small hand strainer rather than your hands?
If you did, that would certainly be less messy, as well as better if you do have the grip strength for it. We unfortunately just didn't have one on hand, so just kind of making do with what we have.
Yeah, so those are the little things. There's so many products out there. I mean, you could get a squeezer for citrus, and there's different types of those. And so if you have those products, please utilize them. If you have a little colander to catch those seeds, please utilize them. But I also don't want that to be a limitation for you to explore cooking and explore these recipes, because again, you can make do with pretty basic kitchen items.
All right, so we just went ahead and we combined the barbecue sauce with the chicken, and like we did before, we're gonna set that aside and then assemble our apple and carrot slaw. So we will take 2 tablespoons of our apple cider vinegar and combine it with olive oil, honey, and then salt and pepper until it's combined.
So again, this slaw for quality purposes should be consumed within 24 hours. And so that might, if you really want to explore these recipes all together as we're presenting them today, this might be the sandwich you have on day 1 of the week. But the tossing the barbecue chicken together and storing it in that way, it also imparts that sauce flavor into the food as it's being stored over time, so it can add that boost of flavor. But that can definitely be in the fridge with the sauce for 3 to 4 days.
All right, so then we're gonna go ahead and just put a little bit of salt and pepper in there. Thank you, Dawn. All right, perfect. And then we will take our shredded carrots as well as our grated apple and go ahead and put those in the mixture.
Just like the citrus fruit can avoid the browning of things like apple, the vinegar would do the same thing. So we didn't use our grated apple immediately today. So it has started browning, but again, it's still going to be tasty. And if you tossed it right away, that grated apple, that would help keep it from browning and look a little bit more visually appealing.
All right, so now that we have those 2 mixtures, we have again our whole wheat bread toasted. And so we are going to take that. And then we are gonna put some of the barbecue chicken on top.
You will want, when you're serving this sandwich, you'll want to heat this barbecue chicken through until it's steaming in the microwave.
All right, so now that that's on there, we'll go ahead and we'll take our slaw and put it on top. You also could add some of the grated cheese if you did like to.
If you are using the grated cheese, you would add that on to the warmed chicken first. For added melting, if it's not melting just from the steaming chicken, you can put it in a toaster oven to finish that melt before you add the slaw. You do want to keep that slaw as a cold item.
All right, so then just like that, we have our second recipe. All right, so now shifting into our last one, our grilled chicken and apple sandwich. We are gonna take, once again, our whole wheat roll. And this is optional, we aren't going to today, but if you did want to add a thin layer of Dijon mustard or mayonnaise on either side, you could. So we are gonna take our sliced chicken breast and put it on our roll. Like I said, the slices really help for layering in this because we're gonna do each step in a layer. So now that we have our chicken on there, we're gonna go ahead and take our apple slices. And then we also have our cheddar cheese already sliced, put that right on top. And then if you press it all together, you'll just brush a little bit of oil on top of it because then we are going to make it so it's more of a grilled cheese. So you don't need a ton, just a little bit to brush the top. Okay. All right, so we'll leave it on there for a couple of minutes and make sure to flip it on the other side, just to really smash it down and give it more of a grilled cheese, just so you have some variety between the sandwiches.
So you're waiting for this cheese to melt and become oozy. This is a great thing to make on a panini press if you do have that little kitchen gadget. Panini press works great. It gives it that squish and it gives it that those lines. And you could also just do this on a skillet in a pan if you don't have a griddle like we do today. Again, all of these recipes are versatile, so use what you have on hand. Add in fruits, vegetables for those boosted nutrients. All of these you could add on in the greens and the spinach onto these sandwiches. You can substitute the fruit for another fruit like pear. There's a lot of options. These also do not need to be sandwiches. You can do it on a bed of greens and make it a salad. And then you can add in other toppings that you prefer onto that salad. You can also use whole grain tortillas for the chicken salad and the barbecue. You can wrap it, so it would be a wrap style. For this grilled cheese style sandwich, if you do it on a tortilla, you can make it into a quesadilla style. You can also have the barbecue chicken or the chicken salad as a dip. You can dip it with vegetables, you can dip it with whole grain crackers. Again, you'll want to consider the need of the older adult as far as chewing and swallowing concerns. And then all of these recipes are showcasing whole grains. Whole grains are an important source of fiber and some of the nutrients that we talked about, including protein. So the reason we want to select the whole grain instead of a white refined grain is because the whole grain does have more fiber and protein and nutrients than the alternative. The chicken today is a lean protein source. And that's an important consideration when selecting protein. As we said, the animal protein does supply that B12 nutrient that you would want to look for some alternative sources of B12 if you do avoid animal sources. We're very happy to take further questions.
I do have one more question. What would you suggest for encouraging folks with poor appetites or sensory changes like diminished taste or smell? How would you say that a caregiver could encourage them to eat more regularly?
Yeah, that does become a challenge as well. One thing is smaller portions, but more frequent, because they may not consume a lot at one time, but giving that opportunity to eat every 2 hours may be important. Also, as you see here, this plate looks quite full because we're showcasing all of our sandwiches, right? That's not anyone's plate that they're going to sit down and eat, but even one whole sandwich on a plate, that might appear overwhelming to somebody who has a lower appetite. So actually serving a smaller portion may seem more manageable to them, and they may be more willing to eat. And then of course, if they finish it and they want more, you can always serve seconds. Another thing would be for the taste and the smell is exploring different options for flavor enhancers. And I had referenced some of those ideas before, but that is also very individualized as well. And so talking with them, did you like this? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? And it may be trial and error as you learn what's more pleasing and acceptable to that individual, because they might be off put by certain flavors or smells, or they may gravitate to certain, and that's just going to be very individualized. So talking about it.
Okay, well, great. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A at the bottom. So I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up a little bit. Thank you so much, ladies, for your time in this excellent workshop. We want to thank our audience who spent the past 50 minutes to an hour with us, and we know your time is valuable as caregivers. We would like to invite you to our next health and wellness workshop next Friday, May 23rd, from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. And that workshop will be on adaptive stretching and breathing. simple techniques for daily wellness. So just a reminder, please fill out the survey at the end of this webinar, and to share, you know, your different caregiving topics that you would be interested in for future programming. We thank you for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful afternoon and a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.